In our session, we'll work through a common problem faced by engineers who are often tasked with improving processes with limited resources. I know when I say that, hopefully that's resonating with everybody in the audience, because often that's the case for all of us. So the use case that I'm presenting is going to be specific to semiconductor, but again, this should resonate with everybody in the audience because we're all often tasked to, solve some pretty big problems with limited resources. And we often think of design of experiments, DOE, as the gold standard for optimizing performance of equipment or tools that are used to manufacture semiconductor devices. It's just so commonly used that it's our go-to, and it's our go-to for good reason. As we go through the presentation, I will be, providing evidence of that. Now, when we're running an effective experiment, we really need a well thought out data collection plan that generates the information that we need to improve tool performance. And again, we're going to speak specifically in semiconductor today, but hopefully everybody's generalizing this to the broader use case. But the information that's needed to improve tool performance while staying within some budgetary limitations, money, time, things like that. If we're successful with our experiment and our data collection, a statistical model can be used to tune a tool, which can significantly reduce the amount of data that's needed to lead to better outcomes. What that typically looks like for us is that we've collected data in a jump data table. We fit a statistical model, typically a standard least squares model. We're allowed to then use the prediction profiler to explore possible process settings that lead to business outcomes that we're targeting. We can even ask the prediction profiler, based on some set goals and objectives, to find the sweet spot for us. And we can go to our tool or our process, dial that in, and hopefully lead to the business outcomes that we're hoping for. But again, the bottom line is we want to be efficient here. We often have a lot of constraints around the experiment and how much time and money and material we might have available to us. So let me paint the picture a little bit better for semiconductor. Semiconductor fabs process hundreds to thousands of semiconductor devices. We call these die, little chips on a single silicon wafer. It can take about 3 months and 1,000 process steps to fabricate a wafer. Some products are more complex than others, but generally speaking, it takes a lot of time to make a semiconductor device. Experiments involving many wafers can be costly, both in manufacturing time and expenses. And I'll even add to that, as if we lose any die that can't be sold, that's a cost we incur also. So due to these costs, it's common to have limits on the number of test wafers that are available to run experiments in a semiconductor fab. In our scenario, we're all going to pretend we're process engineers, and we're tasked with optimizing a plasma-enhanced chemical vapor deposition tool that deposits an insulative film on a wafer. So again, semiconductors are built, through layers and successive process steps. This is just one of them. To do this, our engineer will use experimental data from a designed experiment, a DOE, to develop a statistical model of the process that can be used to adjust the tool to achieve a desired deposition thickness and uniformity. So our process engineer is limited, again, to one lot of 25 wafers for the experiment. There are many, many variables available to control a vapor deposition tool in semiconductor. Our process engineer, based on experience and history, knows that there are a few real strong candidates that we should really strongly consider as we're beginning this process of building an experiment to gather the data and optimize the process. And we're going to focus in on 8. And we're not completely sure that these 8 are all active, or how they might interact, or whether any of these might have a curvilinear contribution to the deposition thickness or the uniformity. Now, one of the challenges at this point is that if we were to just throw every factor at an experiment design, and I'm just going to show you, I've used the custom designer and I'm going to be using it and just referring to kind of outputs. If I throw all the conditions for that experiment at the custom designer, then the design that I'm being asked to run to generate the data I need to build that statistical model is nearly double the number of wafers that I have available. So that's a bit of a challenge for us. Now, fortunately, we expect, based on experience, that not all of those factors may be active. And even not all of the two-factor interactions or even quadratics, the curvilinear contribution stuff may be active also. So at this point, if we know that they're not all active, but we're not really sure, we're not really certain about, how to construct our experiment, which requires us to have some assumption around the model we're trying to fit data to, what do we do? So, an effective strategy is to use some observational data. So these are the data that we're collecting from our process every day and apply that and fit statistical models to those data to help inform how we design or construct our experiment and how we get to that final regression model. So let's take a look at that data table. So we have 4,000 rows available to us. All right, there we go. So our process engineer has gathered 4,000 runs of data. Now let me make a mention. We are kind of in this exploration mode. Call it data mining. We're inquiring about kind of past performance to help inform how we want to get into the future. When we're thinking about responses or variables like range, thickness range, uniformity, they are already noisy. Target thickness, deposition thickness, probably a little less noisy. So when we're in this kind of initial data mining, model exploration phase, range may not be a really good one to look at. We'll add that later within the designed experiment because we certainly want to optimize that. But when we're looking for things that are impacting the thickness, we're probably not going to use that because there's not going to be a lot of signal for us to see for that response variable. So we're already kind of thinking about our data and how that data can inform our process going forward. So we'll leave the range out in this case. So the variables we have are there's a high frequency power and a low frequency power typically for the process. There's a shower head spacing, some gas flow variables. We'll just call target 1 for gas flow, temperature, pressure, kind of thermodynamic type variables. And we also have a couple of categoricals. So if we're a process engineer, often when we do a data pull like this, we may look at a couple of variables that we may wonder if they're contributing to a problem we're having with the tool. Now, an electrostatic chuck, we're going to talk about that variable a little bit more, but they happen to be available for the process engineer, so we're going to take a look at it. We'll have an argument for the designed experiment that, wow, changing one of these out can be problematic, so that might cause problems in our experiment. So we'll circle back on these variables, but I do just want to point out that when we're making that initial data pull and starting to build statistical models, we want to do that in somewhat of an informative process where we're grabbing things that we know to be important. We may also bring some variables in that we have questions about. Again, often Lovey and I were talking about this before we hopped on today, that sometimes our greatest discoveries from analyses come from stuff that we don't expect. So every now and then, think about bringing some things you have questions about into this stage of the process. All right, so we have our data in hand. Now what do we do? Well, one of the first things we should always do is graph the data. Now, we may go to Graph Builder and build some process trends. Well, it turns out it looks like each of our variables, our continuous variables, have a pretty good leverage on thickness. And if we look at that across the different chucks and whether we have argon gas, some purge gas or not, we have a pretty strong contribution. Now, we should always be looking at a graph like this with extreme caution as we're really trying to get to that final stage of optimization. These graphs are never going to tell us easily that we have an interaction between low frequency power and pressure, for instance. We aren't going to see that in a graph like this. We may also not see curvilinear contributions. So it should never be the end result. It's great because it gives us a sense for data quality. It gives us a sanity check on contributions of these variables. But that shouldn't be ever where we stop.